Hey guys, it's Daniel Faust, Learn and Live, one of your hosts. And today, hopefully, we can get connected with Dr. Bill. That is our goal, is to go over and interview Dr. Bill. He's a former Army vet. Let me give you a little of his bio real quick while we would go over and wait for him to go over and to join us. And hopefully we get the connection. So Dr. William Bill Chachkes is retired high school and college educator, former reserve duty in 2 jurisdictions in New York State, and 12 years and 1 day in the U.S. Army Aviation Branch Special Operations Command, and he spent 9.5 years flying Blackhawks for the 160th SOAR. Dr. Bill left the Army in 8/1/1991, so he's been a war hero for a long time, and returned to his education career as well as coach high school and eventually college football. Dr. Bill has also spent 30 years plus covering the New York Giants, local New York City high school and college football, and the NFL draft. So he's going to be joining us shortly, hopefully. If not, we'll pivot this live to a different interview. To a different format, not a different interview, because we have nobody here. Oh, funny, isn't it? Since 2013, he's put his love of firearms into writing about the 2A and self-defense shooting sports. So you can go look at his website at firearmschatpodcast.com. He also helps people prepare for natural and man-made disasters. So he's probably king of this world right now in our coronavirus world, and a leader in the Yavapai County preparedness teams in Arizona Oak Keepers. So he's jumped on. We got connection with him. So we are going to go over and add to the stream. Hey, Dr. Bill, you made it.
Yeah. Well, I've only used this software once before, so it took me a little bit. I was trying to do it on clunky iPhone 8.
Well, of course. Well, we're live now, so we were able to preserve the connection. So I already gave an intro to you and all the stuff that you've gone over and done. So let's just go jump right into your war story.
My war story. I'll give you 3. How about that? In 1983, a very young, 23 and some months old pilot of a Black Hawk, not very long in special operations, maybe a year and change, almost 2 years, and we get sent to Grenada, and everything went pretty much textbook until the last day. We get notified that there is a compound that has been lobbing shells into the airport, and if we knock out this compound, it'll be over. And the compound is on a dock on another finger sticking out from the island, with about 2,500 Grenadian communists, helped by Cubans, East Germans, Libyans, and Palestinians.
Wow.
So they send, for 2,000 plus people, they send 300 Army Rangers and 120 Night Stalker aviators, of which yours truly was the co-pilot in number 5 helicopter. Number 1 comes in, fast landing, but makes it. But 2, 3, and 4 smash into 1 and all explode.
Wow.
So we're in number 5, and my pilot is a 29-year-old descendant of 2 Tuskegee Airmen.
Okay.
Brothers. And as we're banking away, he takes a Russian 12.7 millimeter, which is basically about 51 caliber, round through the canopy and through his helmet and around the inside of his skull and out.
Whoa.
So now here I am with 2 gunshot wounds, one that came through the canopy for me, through my vest, missed everything. I don't know how, but it bounced off an Israeli gold $50. In my copy of the Talmud, I'm obviously Jewish. Right here, right over my heart, missed everything and landed on a spinal rib in my back, just below my shoulder blade.
Wow.
The other round went through my right thigh and out.
Mm.
And here I am bleeding from 4 holes in my body, 23 years old, and I have to land a stricken helicopter.
Wow.
So there's this clearing just past the stand of trees. So I'm making it, and the engine gives out right over the last palm tree before that little clearing. And we drop dead on the palm tree, and a 6-ton helicopter stays on the top of this palm tree.
Wow.
So now they're calling us over the bullhorns. If you give up and surrender, we'll make your death quick.
Ooh.
Be merciful. So they rope me down. They make a Swiss seat because I have a broken leg and a broken back. They rope me down. I'm on 2 spikes of morphine, and the helicopter's rocking in the wind on top of the tree. And I'm laying against the tree, and I'm like, hey, fellas, don't you think we should move to another tree before the helicopter falls on us?
Just a tad.
So just then, a CH-47 with extra machine guns. We called it our baby Spooky. If you remember, in Vietnam, they made the C-47s, the DC-3s, into Spooky gunships with 3 General Electric miniguns on each side. This was basically the same thing except with 20 millimeter, and there was 2 on each side. So they fly over where the Cubans are, and they just circle, and they're hosing them.
Wow.
And they basically, not only did they save everybody else's life, but then they hovered over us. They saved my life. They lowered a basket for me, and on board was an Army medic and a Navy SEAL medic.
Awesome.
And the 2 of them gave me plasma transfusion because I had lost about 4 pints of blood by that point. And they knocked me out. And when I woke up, all I saw was bright white light. And I said, am I in heaven? Because Jews aren't supposed to go to heaven. And the nurse behind me laughed. She said, no, silly, you're in the sick bay on the USS Guam. I said, oh my God, that's terrible. She said, why? She said, you're getting good care here. I said, an Army pilot amongst all you Navy swabbies, I'll never live it down. So that's the first one. The second one was, by now I'm 30 and I'm a much more experienced pilot and officer. And I was also a Ranger School graduate, and we're taught never to leave a man behind, ever. Mm-hmm. Even if it means you're carrying a dead body for whatever distance. Mm-hmm. So they were leaving an Air Force A-10 pilot who had been shot down out to be found by the Republican Guards and the Fedayeen. So I took a helicopter without permission at 0400, not even one of my birds, not even a 60. I grabbed an OH-58D Kiowa Warrior. You know what that is?
Not
That's
strong
a
enough.
Smaller. It's basically a military Bell Jet Ranger, and It's got this big ball, sensor ball on top over the rotors.
Okay.
So I grabbed that, and they're yelling at me over the radio, and I just go to where his beacon is, and I circle, and he comes out of this cave. But by now, they're coming, and they're coming for us. Mm. So he jumps on the helicopter. We get out. While we're getting out, he promises me a bottle of scotch, the most expensive one that he could find. By the way, I'm still waiting 29 years for that bottle of scotch, by the way. On the way out, I don't realize it, but they nick a tail rotor, one of the blades on the tail rotor. And they must have nicked it at the bottom root and not at the top where it would bounce off and fly away. It came off out of its mount, and all of a sudden we were like maybe 50 miles from the Saudi border, still inside Iraq, and all of a sudden the tail of the helicopter starts swinging like a pendulum back and forth. So I'm fighting the stick, and he's telling me, Chief, you sure we're going to get back okay? I said, with all due respect, Major, if you shut the fuck up, we will. And we get over the base, and he's like, Chief, are you sure we can land this thing? And I said, I'll tell you what, Major, if you don't trust me, you can be my guest and jump out. Hmm. So I guess maybe that's why I never got the bottle of scotch.
Maybe.
But, while we're talking, I guess I should put the headphones on so I can hear you a little better. That would help. Yeah, so those are the two. Those are my 2 best memories in the Army. I served a total of 12 years. I did a 5.5 year active stint first,
Mhm.
and I never fully recovered from my back injury from Grenada at that time. So they said, well, we're going to keep you, but we're going to ask you to do active reserve. You're going to go into our reserve battalion, and you're going to be an advisor to a regular aviation unit. I said, all right, if it keeps me in the Army. So I wound up at a base in my home state from New York. I wound up at Fort Drum, New York, one of the coldest freaking bases you will ever be at on the Canadian border near Niagara Falls. And underneath all the buildings, they have tunnels that connect all the buildings when they get like 3 feet of snow.
Yeah.
And they have to shovel a little bit at a time to get out. So that's Fort Drum. So I either flew, I worked the flight line, or I got a secondary MOS as a 150 Alpha, which is Airspace Management Officer, which means you sit in the tower and you're in charge of 3 or 4 air traffic controllers. So I pulled that 1 12-hour shift every other month. Every month you do a weekend and you do 2 weeks a year. But in the active reserve, you have to do a little more because you have to plan training. So I got assigned to 10th Aviation Brigade, 10th Mountain Division as a high altitude adverse conditions flight advisor, which means I have to teach these guys how to fly around cliffs and mountains.
Yeah.
And that worked because some of the flying I did in Desert Storm was in northern Iraq to help out, drop supplies to the Kurds and do gun runs for them to keep the Iraqis off their backs, which to this day they're still fighting. And they have a unit of all women called the YPG. And ISIS hates these people because if they get killed by a woman, they don't get their 72 virgins in heaven.
Wow.
That's a story I heard back then. We had a Kuwaiti advisor who was a Christian and became a very good friend. I'm still writing him to this day. We've been emailing for 30 years. He would sit behind our flight seats and say, no, go here. Don't go there. Saddam's missiles are there. Kind of thing. So when I left, I had a Browning High Power that was made in Canada by Ingalls. And I gave it to him as a gift. And to believe it or not, he still has it to this day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I had some good experiences. I did the reserve thing for 51 months, 4 years and 3 months. And then I was asked in October of 89 to come back because they knew that we'd be eventually going to Grenada. And they knew I also had skills to do planning missions as well as flying them. And I'm proud to say that on December 20th of 1989, I fired the first 8 Hellfire missiles into Manuel Noriega's Comandancia, his headquarters, because we needed to create a diversion because the prison was right across the street, and we were landing MH-6 Little Birds on the roof to put the Delta Force in there to rescue the hostage.
Man, that's a lot of powerful stories and powerful history that you were a part of.
Yeah, they're all going into my book, which is called I'm No Hero. And whenever I get it done, I have an editor that's very strict with me in Washington State that I'll send her a chapter and she'll say, no, write it this way. And then she'll send it back to me. It'll take me 2 months to rewrite it. So that's what I'm going through right now.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's different in that publishing world. I get my books done pretty fast, but like you got a lot of history and a lot of stories, so you want to make sure you get it right.
Well, that and the fact that I'm I'm third generation. Both my grandfathers on my mother's side and my great uncle, my mother's uncle, were in World War I. The 2 grandfathers were in the 1st Infantry Division, but my uncle was a sniper at Belleau Wood, and he has 23 kills. I have his rifle. And then his nephew, my uncle, was a Marine pilot in all 3 wars and was one of the NYPD's first aviation officers, and he taught me how to fly fixed wing. He treated me like I was another son. So I started unofficially flying at 12, officially flying at 16. So by the time I swore into the Army in 19 and 2 weeks, I already had 231 flight hours and single engine, multi engine, all weather, and night. So all the Army really taught me was rotary wing.
Mm-hmm. So you were pretty much set. Now let's go transition out of that. And every war hero on our show transforms into a superhero. What was the hardest part, the lowest part when you got out of the active reserve? Because we tend to get out and we want to get out so quick, but sometimes we're not fully prepared yet. Was there any hard parts or low points before that transformation?
Yeah, I was knocking around what I was going to do as a civilian, part-time civilian, part-time soldier. And my mom was a teacher. I had an aunt. My father's older sister was a teacher. I had a cousin who eventually became a principal. So I decided, because I had the background in helping my parents raise a handicapped sibling, I tried that, and it worked out. I taught for 26 years in the New York City school system. I started as a TA, and I went back to school and got my degree. That took about 8 years of part-time school, plus the Army got in the way a little bit. But I got my teaching license in 1989, and I started teaching after Desert Storm. And I was provisional for 2 years, and then I got my first 15 graduate credits, and that made me permanent. These are the rules in New York City. You have to go after your bachelor's, you have to go a certain number of credits in graduate school before they make you a permanent. And then when you have 30 credits or the MA, you get a step. And then another 15 credits after that as another step, and so on and so forth. So I did that. TA for 8 years, 8.5 years, and full-fledged classroom teacher for 17 and a half. I worked, my first teaching job as a full-fledged teacher I was crisis manager for a 6'2", 400-pound, outburst-prone autistic man-child. And the first week I had David tried to throw me down a flight of stairs, and I would not budge. I locked my arm into the banister, and he was pushing me, and I was pushing him back. And if he had been a normal 16-year-old, he would have been playing high school football. Yeah. No question in my mind, he would have been a defensive lineman. And the guy who eventually became my friend, who was the principal of another program in the building, "What's the matter? You need help?" And I said, "Get my buddy Ron," who was my teaching mentor. "Get Ron!" So Ron comes running in the stairway, and he grabs David by the back of his pants, and we tug him up to the landing. It takes 5 of us to get gigantic 6'2", 400-pound David up to the landing. So I was David's crisis management teacher for 5 years, and I had what's called an individual education program. Every special ed kid has to have one. So I had this list of all these things that David was supposed to accomplish under me. And every couple of months, we checked something off that he did. And he was great working, especially if he knew there was something at the end. He was going to get lunch or a can of diet soda or a treat. He would do anything. I had him working at Central Park picking up cigarette butts for $9 an hour.
Wow.
Planting roses, fixing benches. His last job before he graduated, and he's still living in a group home in Harlem, but in Strivers Row, which is very expensive brownstones in Harlem. And he works for the City University of New York, doing the same thing, working as a maintenance helper. He makes about $13, $14 an hour. Mm-hmm. But he's doing very well. And I remember when I was mugged and I was shot again in 1995. He came with his mom to visit me in the hospital, and he was trying to pull the lines out of my arm because he didn't want me to be in the bed. He wanted me to get up.
Wow.
So that was David. And I transitioned him to a work school program, and I wound up staying there for 14 years. And we were a academic and vocational school, so every teacher had to teach an academic and a vocational. And eventually, I became an assistant dean for that school until I retired. And that's called the Manhattan High School for Career Development. And we had some very, very bright kids that just had wacky behavior. And then we had kids that had second grade reading levels. And I had this one young man who was, I would say, very, very bright, like about 113, 114 IQ. And he was immense. He was 6'5" and like 260. He was a mixed martial artist from the age of 10. So you know the old story, the biggest guy always gets picked on?
Yeah.
So Harold learned to fight. So when I became a dean, Harold was about 15. I sat Harold down in the dean's office, and I said, Harold, what do you want to do with your life? Just what I'm doing now, see? And I said, well, Harold, what have I told you get paid to do what you're doing now? He says, oh, you mean fly choppers and blow shit up like you did, see? And I said, no, wait a minute, Harold, your math's not that good. Now, my math wasn't that good, and I had to have a tutor in flight school to become a pilot. But you, my man, I taught you how to fix computers and radios, and all 5 branches need that. They need people who are technically skilled. So Harold's dad was a Marine at Quezon in 68. So I get Dad on the phone and we discuss it. And he says, if you could convince Harold to join the Marines, I will be forever in your debt, Dr. Bill. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, Harold Sr., I'm going to get Harold Jr. into the Marines. So 3 days after graduation, we go down to the recruiter. He takes one look at him and he says, oh my God, I wish I had a squad of you when I was in Iraq. And I said, well, you don't have a squad of him, but you got him right now. And I said, and his dad and I are going to be his 2 biggest advocates. And then I hear the door open and close, and it's our head dean, who was in the 1st Infantry in Vietnam, another big dude, because he was also a New York City fire marshal before he became a teacher. Wow. So Dean Steve tells the recruiter, this man is special. Okay, you're not going to make him a 0311. He's got skills. So believe it or not, a special ed kid, but still intelligent, Harold got a 106 on the ASVAB out of 110.
Wow.
So Harold went into radio electronics, but he got bitten by the Marine recon bug. And he jumped, and he's crazy, and he's been deployed 9 times. He is not being deployed anymore because he is now a mixed martial arts instructor at Camp Lejeune. Awesome. And yeah, he's a great young man. He was here 2 summers ago with his wife and 2 children. And Harold and I are shooting down at our indoor range because it's too hot to shoot outside here in Arizona in August. And as we're emptying the magazines, Harold's son is reloading them one at a time, 1 round at a time. So he turned out good. He's 33 now. He's made Master Sergeant late last year. So that's he's doing very well. He works a lot. If you remember the Bruce Lee movie Game of Death, where Bruce Lee fought Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Harold's a lot like that. He has long legs. So you really can't get close to him. If he kicks you, you can't really get close to him.
Yeah.
Very, very skilled.
Anyway.
Right. Very, very skilled hand-to-hand. And we taught a lot of stuff at that school. We had a great gym program. The director of phys ed was a former kickboxer, competition kickboxer. So we used to show the kids in the self-defense club, we called it, the different styles. We'd put all the mats down on the floor in the middle of the gym, and we would show the katas, and we would show the different, he was a taekwondo and I was judo and jiu-jitsu and kempo. So you have a student like Harold that you're able to work with and mold into, something as a force for good as opposed to a force for evil. That was probably my highest points were being successful with a young man like David, and then being able to recreate it in a vocational high school setting with somebody like Harold. Because I taught him to fix Apple computers, iPhones, two-way radios. And basically, that's what he's doing in the Corps. He's fixing computers and setting computers up for teams that were going out when he was deployed. He's been to Afghanistan 5 times and Iraq 4 times.
Wow.
So
it
he's
sounds
been
like those experiences that you had in the civilian world, becoming a teacher, becoming a dean, getting your doctorate degree, has been some of that transformation from war hero to superhero. Would you see that this school and this transformation really made that you from becoming that war hero, coming out from the field?
It was a huge help. It was a huge help that I had because I have a lot of even though I'm in a wheelchair now because of my injuries being progressive and degenerative.
Yeah.
I have a lot of boundless energy, and like my wife says, you always frickin' have something to do. Because I was rushing to get the shopping unpacked. My neighbor, who's also from New York, screaming at my wife at the top of her lungs because we have swallow nests in the eaves of my roof. So I have my neighbors who are tall, could reach with a rake or pulling them down. They don't build with straw, they build with mud.
Oh, wow.
And it's very obvious on the side of my house. And I didn't realize it because I don't go in the backyard until I have to barbecue something or grow something. So, but they're helping us out. My neighbors are good people. They're older. This is a 55 plus. And I'll tell you the other thing that I'm doing right now that's my high point. With all this COVID crisis stuff,
yeah,
all the people who do not like our president and who are opposed to firearms for self-defense, this is a 76 unit development that I live in as part of a larger subdivision. And I would say I got 15 calls in the last month. Can you help me get a gun? Can you sell me a gun? Can you take me shooting? Can you help me train? And I have the same answer I have for everybody. Why did you wait until it was a serious problem? Why didn't you tell me 2 years ago, Bill, can you take me to buy a gun? But after I admonished them, I helped them. You know, I have a neighbor who's 74 who has never shot anything but her daddy's revolvers. And she said, I don't think I'm going to be able to get 6 off in time if more than 2 people break into the house. And I said, let's go get you a 9mm. It took me about 10 days to get her the new Smith & Wesson Shield EZ that you can move the slide with one finger like this.
That's really cool.
Yeah, well, my wife has a Italian CZ copy that does the same thing. And she was, you know, oh, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I'm afraid of the virus, this and that. Your immune system is compromised. I said, but you're 14 years older than me. Well, if I'm not worried about it, if I'm wearing a mask, I just took mine off just before we came on. Yeah. I have one made out of Marpat camo, dark camo. And we were out shooting on Saturday. I took my preparedness group out to shoot, which is another thing that I put a lot of energy into helping people running a chapter of Oath Keepers called Yavapai County Preparedness, which is our county here in northern Arizona. And we are the textbook for other Oath Keeper groups across the country. They call my county coordinator or me when they have questions about how do I do this, how do I do that. So that's a great feeling being able to help people prepare for natural or man-made disasters.
Yeah, and that's really cool in this time in this season.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously. And, you know, working with a couple of people that I work with on this, several firearms trainers, they're either former military, former police, a couple of them are both. And they run companies. Another buddy of mine runs a company called Battle Comp. They make compensators for ARs, and he's Filipino American who was a Marine before he became a cop, and he's got 2 daughters, and they shoot better than most guys I know.
That's awesome.
You know, they're 13 and 8.
Whoa.
and they rock it. They rock it. The 13-year-old is already shooting ARs.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah, and the 8-year-old is like she could put 5 from a Ruger 10-22 in the size of a quarter at 25 yards.
Whew. That's a tight
So
cluster.
yeah, that's a tight group. So he's training them very well, and we do a lot of charity work in times of crisis. So we just delivered to our local hospital 5,000 masks and caps
That's sweet.
that a bunch of women at the churches around here made, and we did the delivery for the churches, and we just did that. In fact, we did that yesterday and today. So our folks at the local hospital are rocking all these dog bones and pictures of bulldogs on all their caps, and it's good. It's really good. My wife's an employee there, and I go there for dialysis treatments and physical and occupational therapy. So I believe in motivating. I'd be sitting in the gym, and there'd be a guy on the next stepper next to me, and he's like, "Why am I doing this crap?" And I'm like, "Listen." And I show him my prosthetic right leg. And I say, if I could do this with half a leg, you can do this. And you should do this. And you shouldn't be lazy. And you should kick it. And I make them keep up with me.
And that's really awesome. So that you are like the epitome of the war hero to superhero story. It sounds like a lot of things that you're doing right now is helping out the community with disaster preparedness and going over and helping them equip them with weapons. And what else are you doing to summarize? What are you doing in the community that makes you that superhero? Because you're talking about all these other things. And
well, see, Dan. Here's the thing. The title of my book is called "I'm No Hero." I'm doing what every man should do, whether they believe in the Lord or not. And I'm not preaching, but I do let people know I'm a Messianic Jew, and I tell them what that is. That is a sect of Judaism that also reads the New Testament. So, but we don't call him Jesus; we call him Yeshua. That's his Hebrew name.
Correct.
And we do a lot through the temple as well. We host gatherings of other congregations with us so that they could learn from us and we could learn from them. So, like, for example, we hold our synagogue is held in a Baptist church. So we'll have the Baptists will come and sit with us and experience the service with us, and we'll have some of us will go to them. A Christian Fellowship Church will do that. We'll work with the Roman Catholic Church, and we have a really, really good security team. I'm the assistant security lead. The head lead is a former Air Force security policeman, and I have a retired Phoenix female police sergeant on the team. I have a former Navy shore patrolman on the team. So we have it very simple. The back entrance is always locked. They only open it for me to get my wheelchair in and get in my position. The main entrance is a funnel. So you have to come through the door and see the first greeter. Then you get to myself and the team lead. We're sitting at the entrance to the sanctuary, and everybody wonders, why do I hug everybody that comes in? Why do I say to them Shabbat Shalom, which means, peace and blessings at the Sabbath? Why do I hug them? Because if I don't know you, I'm secretly checking you for weapons or explosives.
Oh.
The rabbi asked me why I was doing that after about a year and a half. And I said, he's also an Army vet. He was supposed to go to Vietnam, and because he spoke German, he went to Germany instead. And he was a missile battery technician. And he asked me, Dr. Bill, why do you hug people when they come in? I said, well, I just about know everybody here, but when I didn't know them, I was checking them for a gun or a bomb. He said, really? You could do that? I said, it's pretty simple, Steve. You just a little initiative, a little get up and go do it. And I think that is the issue with a lot of today's youth, present company excluding. Uh, well, I mean, I am older than you, but you're not a youngster. But I think the problem with the Gen Z folks
Yeah.
and the Gen Y folks is that they want everything handed to them. And I think our two generations were the last two that actually believed in working for something and earning it. I worked very hard to get through school, 15 years of college,
Wow.
between undergrad, grad first time, grad second time, and post grad. And the thing that kept pushing me was remembering my mom was a teacher, but in her day, you didn't need a master's. You could teach with just a bachelor's and 15 credits. And she was a performing artist. She
Mm.
taught dance and she taught acting. And my dad was a postal inspector. He was a post office cop, but he was a substitute math teacher in the toughest school in the Bronx, Roosevelt High School. And he used to wear his badge on a chain like this, but tucked underneath his t-shirt. And nobody ever saw it. And one day the kids were giving him crap. And he just took the badge out and said, This is my regular job. So if you want me to have the IRS crawl up your parents' behind for the next 3 years, they'll sit down and do your math problems. The class went quiet because they'd never been taught by a Fed before. Class went silent. And that's usually how my dad worked. He was so quiet that my uncle, his older brother, who was also a post office cop, nicknamed him Mumbles. And I said, "Why, Uncle Jack?" And he said, "Because when your father used to get angry, he'd mumble. But that's when you have to be worried, because if he mumbles for more than 2 minutes, a punch is coming."
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever want to experience that.
No, my dad was like 5'5" and change, and he made the army and the post office cops by an inch and a half. But he was a tough son of a gun, man. He grew up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and he was a tough guy. My dad, I give him a lot of credit. I lost him at 59 to heart attack number 4.
Wow.
But he quit smoking for a couple of years. He cut back on the cholesterol for a little while. He'd come down to the park and play ball with a couple of us kids, but he could never. Once you have heart disease, you never get rid of it. And he got progressively worse. And my friends used to joke because he'd wear a jacket in 85 degrees in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Why'd your dad always wear a jacket?" And my friends would ask me. And I said, "Why do you think?" He says, "I got something going on under there." I said, "Yeah, I got a badge and a gun under there. That's why he wears a jacket. He doesn't want to be bothered on the subway." And at night, this is how my father and my late father-in-law knew each other long before my wife and I met. My father-in-law was a New York City Police Department Transit Division night supervisor at our local transit precinct, which is where 2 subway lines met and diverged.
Okay.
And we called it the Spanish Castle. And it was right next to the Bronx Zoo. And my father would fall asleep on the subway, and some guy would try to rob him. And he carried his off-duty gun in a tightrope holster at the spine. And he said, "Yeah, I'll give you my wallet. It's right back here. I keep it tucked in my pants. Federal agent, you're under arrest."
Wow.
And he'd have to bring him to my late father-in-law's precinct. So my father-in-law is on his deathbed, oddly enough, from the same thing I'm going through right now, kidney failure. And I tell him, my dad used to come into your precinct with an off-duty arrests. I think he made about 4 or 5 of them. He says, "Wait a minute, your dad, about 5'6", short guy, balding in front with a crown?" I said, "Yes, I knew your father for years." I said, "Oh, look at that." He says, "We even played cards a couple of times. Came to the card game." Because my father-in-law was notorious with poker, pinochle, bridge, and really, really sad story though was I lost my uncle, my not only my father's brother-in-law but his best friend. He was on the major case squad for the NYPD, and he pursued and captured David Berkowitz, the son of Sam Killer,
Oh,
who lived in my neighborhood, was 3 years older than me, went to my high school ahead of me, and I never knew him because he hung out with the stoner crowd, and I
yeah,
hung out with the musician crowd. So they said, "How are we going to get this guy before he can get to his guns? Because he's going to go out shooting if he can get to his guns."
yeah.
And my father said, "He's a postal employee. Have him come through the door, have him come out of his house on a Saturday to work overtime." So he comes out of the building, and my uncle's standing there, and he's doesn't have his jacket on. He just
Mm,
has, uh, like a fashion vest, and he's a big dude. My uncle was 6'2" and about 260. He was on the NYPD boxing team, and he had his gun back here on his right hip, on his right kidney,
mm.
and he just hauled off and hit him with a right
Ooh,
cross. And he said, "David Berkowitz, you're under arrest. I'm Detective Leonard Weiss of the Major Case Squad. You're under arrest for suspicion of 6 murders." And I was like, my father was just standing there laughing. And because Berkowitz was Jewish, he said to him in Yiddish, "How long did you think you were going to get away with this? Did you think we weren't going to catch you? Of course we're going to catch you. You've got the federal government working with the New York City Police Department, not against it. Of course we're going to catch you." So
over time, the bill becomes due.
exactly. And I guess the best story I have from recently was I had a really good friend who was a local policeman who retired because of PTS, because he had gone undercover for the county and busted a meth ring, and they were going to shoot him in the head like 3 times,
Wow.
and 3 times he got out of it. So he 48, and he was uh, on a hunting trip with his youngest son, not even running up a hill, just got out of his truck, keeled over from a heart attack at 48.
Wow.
So his middle son just graduated basic training at Fort Benning,
Hmm.
and he's going directly into airborne. And as long as he passes airborne, he goes directly into ranger assessment, and then from there, actual ranger school. So I used to work out with this kid at my local Planet Fitness, and he would tell me, I want to join, but I don't know what to do. I says, "What do you want to do?" He says, "I want to kill bad guys." I says, "Well, uh, join the Rangers." I said, "Well, get accepted to the Rangers, and you can go from there. You could either, join Special Forces, or you never know."
Mm.
I said, "I had a friend who was actually past Navy SEAL buds and was a small boat driver. And because our unit, the 160th SOAR, used to drop Navy SEAL, the Special Warfare Combat Crewman boats to insert the SEALs by water from our helicopters." He says, "Gee, I think I'd like to do that." So he switched over to the Army and became a Night Stalker crew chief. And he's still going strong. He put in 25 years already. And there was a TV show about 2 years ago called Valor. I don't know
Hmm.
if you remember that. It's on streaming now on Netflix. Um, Matt Barr is in it, who is currently in the CBS series about treasure hunting.
Okay.
And they were called the Shadow Raiders, but it was supposed to be based on our unit. And the general who did the review twice was the sergeant major of our regiment.
Oh
His name
wow.
is Dan Luna. So after I saw the first episode, and when he did the review with the colonel of the troops, I texted him. I said, "Hey, Dan, I'm watching you on TV. That's a great way to get a promotion from sergeant major to lieutenant general. How'd you manage that?" So he says, "Shut up, kid. You're still a kid. I'm 18 years older than you, still a kid." He
Wow.
said, I was I was knocking knees with high school girls when you were in diapers. I
That
said,
is true.
that's nice. It's also true. He says, yeah, well, I just picked the best one and I married her. Okay. But he got a technical advisory gig on that series. And it's too bad that didn't continue. It was only 13 episodes. It didn't continue on broadcast.
Well, let's continue with the rest of your story. So to get this summed up, so
Sure.
you awesome war hero, great superhero. If you had to talk to yourself, back when you were getting out of the service, and now you've done all the things now, what would you give advice for 3 superhero tactics that you would give and say, hey, take this so you can go over and thrive?
Stay away from illegal drugs. Not that prescription drugs are great either, but stay away from illegal drugs. It's only going to drag you down and make you worse. I've seen some great people go to crap because they didn't stay with it. They didn't keep focused on what they should have been doing from their service days. It continues when you're a civilian. Your oath never expires. And if you remember that your oath never expires and that you have to be an example, even if you're not leading people, you have to be an example for the people around you. That's number one. Number two, work hard at whatever you want to be successful at. Pick something that you want to be successful at and work at it. Don't quit. Don't give into the whole, well, I'm not doing that good. I could do better than this. Why am I bothering? That happened to me with the football media business. I did it for 30 years, and I let it get undone by 3 friends. By the way, never go into business with family or friends. I had 3 close friends. 2 of them were service connected. One was a Ranger and one was a Navy gunner's mate. We went into business with a business partner who did not share our ideals, and he wanted to create dissension between the rest of us so he could sweep in and take over, basically. And I wouldn't allow it because it was my thing. So I shut it down 6 years ago and exclusively focused after that on preparedness and Second Amendment and self-defense and shooting sports. I tell people you have to work hard or else you don't get anywhere with it. Number 3 is I tell people if you are in a committed relationship or you have a spouse, that person is the person you are supposed to be supporting and supportive of, the person that you are supposed to work for and they for you. And if you have children, your first priority is your kids, whether you like it or not. And if you just want to sit around and drink beer all day and screw off, that's fine if you don't have any commitments. But if you have commitments in life, you should stick with them and complete every task you start. If you can't complete a task, don't start it.
Yeah, that's great wisdom to pass along. So I want to thank you, Dr. Bill, for coming on. Here's Dr. Bill's website if you want to go listen to his podcast, firearmchatpodcast.com. Go out there and check it out. Go over and listen. You got a lot of great wisdom from him. And if you want Dr. Bill to be on our TV show, War Hero to Superhero, transforming military veterans and first responders in their lives from the bedroom to the boardroom, watch the show. Only 3 seconds gets a view. If you go over and watch it just for 3 seconds, just to contribute to him to go over and win. So in 72 hours, we count the votes for all the people we interview this week, and whoever gets the most amount of views will be on our show live across the world with War Hero to Superhero. So thank you, Dr. Bill, for going over and being on this interview. You have any parting words before we punch out?
Yeah, I like that Punch Out. I wasn't a jet pilot; my cousin was. But uh, on the podcast, we also discuss general things that 50-plus-year-old males who were cops or soldiers would talk about related to. And we're part of a network called the Self Defense Radio Network at selfdefenseradio.net. And right now we're teaching all these new gun owners that we have. We're doing a video series called Guns 101. And if you're a new firearms owner, I would highly suggest that you watch the episodes in that series. We have some of the best trainers in the United States uh, giving up their time freely to help you learn. And Saturday, I took our Oath Keeper group, Yavapai County Preparedness, out shooting, and we were all practicing social distancing. But we had about 16 people, and we had all these tables in a line right across the firing line, and all our tents up, and we were out to about 135 yards up to the side of the hill, and we had everything out. We had shotguns, we had 357s and 44s, we had ARs, we had 1911s, we had Glocks, we had SIGs, we had Smith and Wesson, and if you buy it, we'll teach you how to use it, how to defend yourself. So I think that's very important in this day and age, especially with what's going on right now. And you see it, Dan. I'm sure you see it every day where you are.
Yeah, it just depends on where you're at. I've been fortunate to live on base, but yeah, you see it every day depending on where you're at. So definitely connect with Dr. Bill and Firearm Chats podcast to go over into.
And I'm digging the shirt. I'm digging the Blackhawk shirt. That's what I drove.
Oh yeah, it's from 9 Line. So also, I usually support military vets. So if they want to go over and get branded on the show, send me a T-shirt or send me a hat. I'll brand you during the show. So
I'll send you a hat. We got hats. I'll send you a hat.
Yeah, I'll wear the hat for the one-time only show. I'm not
a hat. Okay.
I shaved the head because of we've been stuck in for a long time. So all right, so guys.
All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, guys, if you want Dr. Bill to be on our show, War Hero Superhero TV, go over and put out those views. 3 seconds. That's all it takes is to get a view for a count. We're going to let you guys go. And thank you for your time, Dr. Bill.
Thanks so much, man.